As I mentioned in the previous audio video, and again, I do apologize for any vibrational noises you might hear. Those could be notifications or messages. But as I mentioned in the other one, I was, of course, recommended to Shifting Dub's, comic drama dub, I should say, of House of Cards, which was issue 178 and 179 of Archie Sonic. Well, once again, YouTube decides to recommend me to basically another video. And this video is a documentary from, I think it's Popcast. I think Popcast is the ones that uploaded this and did this documentary. I think it is them. Let me double check. Yes, it is Popcast. And it is called Star Trek Voyager, the documentary you've been waiting for. And one thing I've noticed, because they do have it divided up in chapters, timestamps, if you will, is they do not touch upon season 2 that much, if at all. They just talk about, obviously it looks like they just talk about how everything came to be, how they were able to get everything going, and then whoop, I think one chapter is called And We're Off, and then they just talk about season 3 onward, and that was it. But it's kind of understandable why they would not want to talk about season 1 and 2. Season 1, basically, with any show, is an introductory season. It has some storylines, but it lets you get to know who the characters are, what the mission is, and so on and so forth. Season 2 is considered basically the worst, but I guess was successful enough to continue on for several more seasons, or allow the show to move on for several more seasons. But why is season 2 considered the worst? Well, it had a mixed bag, from what I understand, of episodes that people liked. Were in kind of, well, they kind of liked, but they kind of like in between of. Some didn't like and all that. But one in particular is probably considered the worst out of the entire Voyager franchise, or the Voyager chapter of the Star Trek franchise, and that is Threshold. Threshold is basically, from what you can look up online, is the 15th episode in season 2. And it is widely considered, not just by fans, but by the cast and the crew, as the worst episode ever. And even though it took place in continuity and in canon to Voyager, basically it was so bad that even though people, diehard Star Trek fans would say, well, it took place in this season and, thus it's canon, it's continuity, or part of the continuity, everybody, every other fan, Trekkie, diehard fan, whatever, every other fan, including the cast and crew, like I was saying before the interruption, basically, there are fans that look at it and try to argue the idea that it is in canon, it is continuity. But you even have other fans, other diehard fans, Trekkies, whatever, including the cast and crew, that acknowledge, yeah, it's part of season 2 and there's nothing they can do about that, but it is non-canon. That's right. It's basically what's considered like a one-shot like episode, which has nothing to do with, with the show, with the rest of the show. It has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it, period. And I don't think, honestly, you can blame them. I mean, yes, I have been around long enough to see many live action and animated shows have some unique, crazy, off-the-wall episodes, occur in, within the rotation of its existence, or their existence, I should say. I have seen that time and time and time again. And, I'll give credit where it's due. Sometimes when they do have these kind of episodes like Star Trek had with Threshold, sometimes basically they will be, still considered canon. They will still be considered part of the continuity. And even in future seasons, if not future episodes within that same season it takes place in, that will be, that situation, that moment, that, off the wall, crazy like episode, which basically would feel like nothing made sense, would be acknowledged. Not here with Star Trek. Not here with Star Trek Voyager. And honestly, if you were to ask anybody to rank some of the worst episodes in the franchise history of over 50, 60 years, 60 plus years, I should say, if you were to ask anybody to acknowledge what is considered the worst, threshold would be at the very top. That's right. It'd either be number one in many people's, eyes and many people's list, or it might be in the top 5, because it is so out of left field. Because the main thing is, one of the main characters, crew members, Tom Paris, I guess in story accelerates so far into light speed, goes beyond it, that he ends up being everywhere at once and triggers the next step of basically the future of human evolution. And that future of human evolution, obviously, is to become a humanoid salamander. Yeah, that. And what's even crazier about this is he takes basically the main character, Captain Janeway, and causes the same thing to happen to her, as well as accelerating his process even further. But he goes beyond the light speed that caused him to evolve, mutate, if you will. He goes beyond that even faster by 10 to 20 times. Let me know if you're a fan of Star Trek. Let me know if I'm wrong or not. To the point that she is able to basically be sped up to catch up with him in this kind of scenario. And what happens? They get discovered on a very rainforest-like planet, and not only discovered and subdued and eventually returned to normal later, but when they're discovered, it's discovered that at the same time that they mated and they had babies, who I guess are old enough now to go realize, okay, we're on our own now. And they basically swim into the water. And then it's implied that Janeway, I guess to kind of, in the eyes of a lot of people that talked about this episode, to kind of basically make, the guilt go away from, the total responsibility and guilt go away from Paris for what he did. Janeway suggested it might have been her that suggested that they mate when they became salamanders. Yeah, what sense does that make? I'm just saying. What sense does that make? Makes no sense. But again, Star Trek Voyager episode Threshold is not the only episode but it's not the only series that's been, that's had an episode like it, that's been balls to the walls, confusing, whacked out, whatever. The difference, though, is, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of shows that I've seen throughout my 45 plus years have acknowledged in some shape or form that episode and the weirdness accompanying with it. Yeah, it's acknowledged it. Like, you know what's crazy? Lower Decks did an episode, I think last season or two, where they basically had two characters fused together to become a new character that now had the intention of doing it to everybody else, and they did temporarily. Now, some might say, well, that doesn't make sense or anything. Why would you want to fuse, and why would your fusion want to now suddenly do it to everybody else? It's because basically when both minds fuse, they create a new mind, and that becomes the dominant persona. That's the one that's like, hey, I like this new me, I'm going to do it to everybody else. And even though that may not make sense, first of all, the show is animated, but two, basically they gave a reasoning. The reasoning being that the fused version of the two characters wanted to have control, wanted to, basically have power and basically create a whole fleet, a whole enterprise worth of fusions. Yeah, it probably didn't make sense. But again, Lower Decks is supposed to be more comedic than anything in Star Trek. But still, when you think about it, it felt very similar to it. Because I guarantee you there are some fans of Lower Decks that are like, that don't make sense. I don't like it. I'm not considering it canon. And that's fine. Or I'm not considering it part of the show. And that's fine. I mean, you even have an episode, what's her name? Tarek? T-I-C-I, whatever her name is, the green girl. You have her mutating into a freaking scorpion, and people are like, well, that's out of left field. I didn't see that coming. And yet, the way to restore her is to make her laugh. See, these are episodes that, within the animation perspective of Star Trek, may not make sense in the grand scheme of things, but they will be acknowledged. I haven't watched all of Lower Decks, but I can guarantee you it's probably the kind of series, especially going into its final season, that would have the characters acknowledge certain events, even if they're weird and whacked out and out of place. Especially, and those events, I'm trying to think of what I was going to say, almost had a brain fart there, and those events being like the fusion and Tyrek, or whatever her name is, going scorpion mode and all that. They would acknowledge that full front, no doubt. But when it comes to Voyager, they will not acknowledge Threshold. They will not acknowledge that as canon or part of the continuity or whatever. They won't acknowledge it in future seasons. They won't acknowledge it in episodes within the same season it came on or debuted in. They won't acknowledge it during even the comic book adaptations, because sometimes the comic books will either do their own thing or kind of have a connection, in season or in continuity of the show. They wouldn't even acknowledge it that. They won't even acknowledge it during crossovers. If they wanted to ask, what was the weirdest thing you've ever gone through, voyaging, going across the sky or going across, the stars. They will not acknowledge it because it was so out of left field. Especially with your main character suggesting that it might have been her that wanted to mate. It's just weird. Just weird. So I can understand why this episode would be considered, and I do apologize for that vibrational noise there. This episode would be considered, that was a Facebook notification, but I understand why people would consider this one of the worst, if not the worst Star Trek episode of all time within the entire franchise, from the OG even up to Lower Decks and beyond. Because it just did not make sense. And again, when you have the cast and the crew saying the same thing as the fans and acknowledging that this is a one-shot, non-canon story, can you honestly blame anybody for looking at this as one of the more whacked-out, weirdest episodes ever done with any Star Trek, show or Star Trek-related or inspired show? I don't even think Battlestar Galactica or Babylon 5, pulled this crap. Correct me if I'm wrong. But still, it's just one of those situations to where you're like, really? Really? Like, this is your answer as to why this all happened between these characters? It's like, hello, don't make sense, But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Is all I'm saying. What are you going to do? But anyway, I just thought I'd give my thoughts on it. Again, I understand why it's considered the worst, if not the worst, of all time and all of Star Trek period, even up to today with the likes of Lower Deck and so on. I understand that. But again, it's not the first time a show has had this kind of an episode, that's whacked out, weird, WTF and all that. There's also been, shows in the past 45 years, animated and live action, that I've seen that have done something similar to where it just does not make sense. It doesn't feel like it should fit into the show or the story, the continuity that they're telling. But the difference is that some of these shows, live action or animated, will acknowledge that episode and the events that took place in it, even if it's just very briefly. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Let me know, being fans of Star Trek yourself, let me know what your thoughts were on Threshold when you first saw it. Do you feel that it is still considered the worst, if not the worst, in Star Trek franchise history? And let me know if you feel like the episode in Lower Decks where they had fusions kind of trying to take over, as well as the green girl, Tyrek, whatever her name is, becoming Scorpion. Do you feel maybe those kind of align themselves in the same in the same vein, as as Star Trek, as Threshold, or even that one episode where you had, I think, one of the male characters, and this is Lower Decks, that is, in Lower Decks, one of those male characters give birth to a female who died, and thus gets reborn through that one male. Let me know if one of those three in Lower Decks that I mentioned kind of falls in line with this, but you, as a fan, would accept more than that and everything. And also let me know if there's any other shows, sci-fi or animated or live action, that you may have watched that had episodes like this, themselves, but never were afraid to reference or acknowledge the events that happened in that episode. Let me know. Comment down below, live chat during the premiere. If you haven't live chatted, but comment down below. Ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the video, subscribe to the channel, I should say, like the video, ring the bell for notifications. Also, check out my Teespring store. Link will be in the description down below. Also, check out where you can find my content elsewhere, from rumble.com at bwroses, odyssey.com at bwroses, VENMO bwroses. I got a Venmo and a Cash App as well. You can check those out. Also, find me at all your favorite audio and at times video podcast affiliates like iHeartRadio, iTunes, Radio Public, Audible, Spotify for podcasters, and also check me out at Pandora and many others. But guys, give me your thoughts overall. Do you agree with what I had to say here? Let me know. And until next time, I will talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care.